Let's share with our friends. Let's share with our friends the meeting details. Let's share with our friends. Let's share with our friends. We are commencing in the next minute. Uh, Good day, everyone. Good evening to you all, wherever you are. Greetings to you all. I hope you are all good. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. This session marks the final webinar for 2024, and what a remarkable year it has been indeed. It actually, so we firmly believe that each individual is a vital micro contributor to the aggregate economy, whether be it in Zimbabwe, be it in Kenya, be it in Botswana, be it, across Africa, or even on the global stage. You have a difference that you have to make at an individual level basis. And as we close the year, I encourage you all to follow our social media platforms to stay updated on the exciting programs we have lined up for 2025. Together, you and I can make a difference. They say that be the change that you wish to see. So each and every one of us should be problem solvers. There are many problems that we need to solve. And that's the reason why we've got this webinar. And I hope and believe and trust as well that by the end of this webinar, we could have taken many lessons from that. We also value your feedback and as well as ideas. So if you've got any suggestions on how we can improve these online webinars, please do not hesitate to reach us out. And so without further ado, allow me to hand it over to my co-host, Ashton Ketani, who introduce our distinguished guest and lead the proceedings. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the session. Over to you, Mr. Ashton Ketani.
All right. Thank you so much, Light. Am I audible?
Yes, confirmed.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us. It is my honor to welcome you all to today's virtual seminar entitled Tapping into the Unconventional, where we'll be discussing on how to live beyond the obvious. Yes, beyond the obvious. I would like to recognize our guest speaker, none other than Dr. Jimmy Muchechetere. Dr. Jimmy, may you confirm if you are in?
Yes, I am indeed. Thank you very much for the introduction.
All right, thank you so much. So, people may ask, who is Dr. Jimmy Muchechetere? So Dr. Jimmy Muchechetere is actually a dynamic professional with a decade of experience spanning medicine, accounting, finance, and investment management. So after earning his medical degree in Zimbabwe, he's transitioned into finance by completing postgraduate studies in accounting and finance, followed by the prestigious Chartered Financial Analyst certification. Currently, he's an equity analyst at one of the wealth and investment companies, actually big companies, if I may say, Investec. Dr. Muchechetere specializes in analyzing and selecting stocks for international equity funds. His approach prioritizes business with sustainable and competitive advantages, robust cash generation, and long-term growth potential. He integrates environmental, social, and governance ESG principles into investment strategies, actively engaging with companies to promote responsible practice and alignment with reinvestment objectives. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome Dr. Jimmy Muchechetere.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So before Dr. Starts with his presentation, I'll to give out some of our housekeeping rules. So we are going to give you some time to ask questions. So may you please find somewhere where you write your questions so that we don't disturb the flow of the conversation. And we also ask you to remain on mute until we get to the question and answer segment. And after Dr. Jimmy Muchechetere's presentation, we'll have time to ask some questions, which some of you are already sent off the registration forms. So without wasting much of our time, Dr. Jimmy, it's your time.
Thank you very much, Ashton. Really appreciate it. Just putting my presentation on. Tell me if you can see it.
Yes.
Fantastic. So I propose to spend about 20 or so minutes going through the presentation, which takes you a bit through my history and the lessons that I've learned, and then at the end we can have a discussion. So as Ashton rightly said, we're going to talk about unconventional paths and specifically focus on the power of unconventional career paths, and then what can we learn from that, both from a book that I read as well as some transferable skills. We'll look at some case studies, and I'll suggest a few strategies before concluding. So in the early 2000s, I graduated as a doctor. This is definitely not me, but it's just a picture that I found. Yeah, and I was very, very happy. I had all sorts of dreams, like many of you young people, wanted to buy a house, wanted to buy a car, and all that sort of stuff. And then something happened in Zimbabwe around that time called hyperinflation. I'm not sure if you guys are old enough to know exactly what hyperinflation was, but just in case you weren't, hyperinflation was a period where we had to print a lot of money. And I know that some of that is still happening today, but today we've got the US dollar, so things are a bit more stable and people can kind of ignore what the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe is doing. But at that time, the only thing we had was the Zimbabwean dollar, and you couldn't ignore it. And so hyperinflation happened, and then everything changed. If you remember these days when we had $100 trillion notes, when I was growing up, as in primary and high school, the biggest note that we saw was a $20 note. So it just gives you a sense of perspective. And when this happened, hyperinflation, everything started to cost a lot more. This is a picture from The Economist, where they put out this headline: a loaf costs $45 billion in Zimbabwe. It's one loaf of bread, which to the outside world was absolutely incredible, but to us was our living reality. But what that meant is that all my dreams of buying a house, having a nice car, etc., were shattered because no one really wanted to sell their house in Zim dollar anymore. And as doctors, as you can imagine, working at Paririnyatwa, you were not paid in US dollars during those days. So buying a house, buying a car was definitely off the table. But it wasn't just me, it was a lot of people. And so what happened was that anyone who could leave left the country to go to America, to Canada, Australia, UK, etc. Anywhere that you could go, you'd go, especially if you were a professional or if you had a relative in the diaspora, you left the country during those days. But for doctors, it was different because there's a special letter that you need to get from your regulator to be able to register with a different regulator in a different country. And basically what they said is you can't get that letter unless you go and see President Mugabe himself. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen. So for doctors, it was very, very hard to leave. But fortunately for us, there were two countries that accepted Zimbabwean doctors without this letter. One was Swaziland, the other was Lesotho, for a number of reasons, which I won't go into because they are not really important for today. But I ended up going to Lesotho, making the 1,591.3 kilometer journey from Harare all the way to Maseru. But what happened is that when we got to Maseru, they knew that we were running away from our country, which had so many problems. And so they sent us to the most rural hospitals that you can imagine. So Maseru is the capital city of Lesotho. And where I was 8 hours away from Maseru. That's how far I was from anywhere else. Very, very rural and remote. There was really nothing there. But my experience had taught me two things. And by experience, I'm talking about hyperinflation. One was that if you are a doctor or a professional, you couldn't ignore anything to do with money because, money actually mattered. In fact, the thing that we all learned was the time value of money. Now, I put this picture here, which shows a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And it kind of illustrates how important money became because the value of your dollar or $100 trillion note today will be very different from the value of the same note tomorrow. So the time value of money was one of the most important lessons that I got from hyperinflation. The second one was how do you protect the value of your money? Obviously, you could do buying hard assets, whether it's a wheelbarrow or a sack of sugar or cooking oil or some non-perishables. And then you could barter that at a later date. But another way that we all learned about was equities. So here I'm showing a picture from a Bloomberg screen. And this was my first introduction of equity. So by day, I was a doctor, and by night, I was trying to protect my money by looking at companies on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. So this happened just before I left the country to go to Lesotho. And then I found myself stuck in the middle of nowhere. And then the only option that I had at that point in time was to study something called the CFA or Chartered Financial Analyst. I actually hadn't heard about this before, but I came across it because a friend of mine was doing an MBA, said there's something that's really difficult called a CFA, and pass rate is less than 50%, and the number of people who start and who finish is less than 10%, and all sorts of horror stories. But the good thing is they send you a box of books once a year. You go into the exam and you write, so you don't need to attend any classes, etc., which was absolutely perfect for me. Why? Because I was stuck in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't attend any classes, so I ended up studying for the CFA. The question I almost get asked is, what did medicine have to do with finance? On the face of it, not much. But I suggest to you two very important things that I've learned over time. And this now relates to taking the unconventional path. One is there's always something that you learn in life that you can apply in other areas as well. That's always one important lesson. So nothing that you learn is wasted. It might seem unimportant or unrelated at the time, but in the fullness of time, that is going to come and help you. And then the second thing really is the power of the pivot. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the power of the pivot. But what happened is around that time, I came across a book called Who Moved My Cheese? And it's a very short book, probably less than 50 pages long. It will take everyone on here less than an hour to read the book. But here is a nice summary if you don't want to read the book. It's a book about 4 characters, and they are all mice, as you can see. And these mice turn up to a certain place, let's call that place X, every morning, and they find their cheese and they eat their cheese, and then they go their merry way home, whatever. And tomorrow they come and do the same, and the following day they do the same. Now, one day they turn up to place X and discover that someone had moved the cheese. Now, the book then goes on to tell this story, but in summary, there are 4 characters. There are 4 of these mice. The first one is called Sniff, and Sniff detects change early. So on the first day, you notice, well, not you've noticed, the cheese had moved, and he said, yes, the cheese has definitely moved, and it's most likely not going to come back again. But the problem with Sniff is he is a talker, but he's not a doer. So he doesn't do anything about it. He just keeps coming back every day saying, you see, I told you so. The cheese has definitely moved. You see, I told you so. And then there's Scurry. Scurry is not much of a talker, but he takes quick action. So the first day, there's no cheese. He comes back the second day, there's no cheese. And he says, okay, there's no cheese. I'm out of here. I'm going to go and look for new cheese. And then there's Ho. Ho keeps coming back day after day, hoping that the cheese will come back. And then after a long time, he realizes that definitely the cheese has been moved. It ain't coming back. And finally, he goes away to look for new cheese. And then finally, there's Ham, who is resistant to change. Now, Ham is the guy who will keep coming day after day after day. In fact, if you come back 100 years later, the bones that you will see at place X are those of Ham, because he is the guy who is resistant. Now, I summarize this book, but I think it's still worth you reading it because the way the narrative goes is also quite insightful. But what I learned was things had changed. I'd set out, 15 points, university book prize, everything. I was very, very happy, well set for life, you'd have thought. But somebody moved my cheese. And at that point in time, I had a choice to make. Either I could complain about it and be a Sniff, or I could take action, be a Scurry. I could delay and be a Ho, or I could, keep hoping that things would change again and be a Ham. But what I decided to do in the end was to take action and move to the suit, which, was never in my plans. Now, what is the underlying lesson there? The underlying lesson is the power of the pivot. Pivoting is you have a plan, things change, and then you have to change. And that is a superpower. A lot of people get stuck because they have this well-laid plan that they've invested a lot of money, a lot of time. Your parents have invested, your friends, your family, etc. They've invested in you going along a certain pathway. And then things change, and then you are stuck. You are one of the Ho's or the Hamses. Why? Because people have invested a lot and you're not going to pivot. So the ability to be a Scurry is a superpower, is the ability to pivot, is the ability to change, to deviate from your original plan. Now, there's an important concept called the, excuse me one second. There's an important concept which is kind of an illusion, where if you learn something new, all of a sudden you start seeing more of it, right? For example, if you think, oh, I want to buy a BMW X3, a yellow BMW X3, all of a sudden you start noticing yellow BMW X3s everywhere. There's one in Brook, there's one in Winona, there's one in Southerton, there's one in Barry. I had not realized there were so many. And it's really about the ability to focus because that's something that you are doing. And I mentioned that because once I learned about this power of pivoting from home of cheese, I started to notice it everywhere. So yeah, a few case studies, examples of pivoting, right? You've got well-known companies such as Starbucks. When Starbucks started, it was making espressos and coffee beans, and then it pivoted after seeing that that actually was not making money. The money was further down the value chain and became a coffee house. You got Play-Doh, which started as a wallpaper cleaner. Now, Play-Doh actually is a noun in terms of kids modeling compound. You've got Netflix, which everyone here will be familiar with, which started as not even a DVD rental service. It started as a cassette rental service, VCR rental service. And then now it's a streaming and content production giant. You've got YouTube, which may surprise you, started as a dating site, now commands 10% of all the views online. It's a video sharing platform, and so on and so on. Nintendo was a playing cards company. Now it's a video games giant. So companies have always pivoted, and the ones that have pivoted have created extraordinary value. And the thing is, they started on a particular path. They had a plan. They looked at what was happening, what's the change, where are the winds blowing, where is the future, and then they decided to pivot. So the ability to pivot is a superpower. But it's not just companies, it's people as well. Jeff Bezos, who is the founder of Amazon, he started as a hedge fund product manager. And as a hedge fund manager, he was making a ton of money, multimillionaire. You know, for most people, you've made it. And so why change? But he decided to change, and now he is one of the richest people in the world, worth over $100 billion. Jana Pittman was a world champion Olympic athlete, and she pivoted. She's now a very successful medical doctor, and so on and so on. People pivot all the time, and they do it because they see what's happening out there, and they, as the saying goes, they skate to where the puck is going. They skate to where the puck is going. So that power of pivoting is actually a superpower. The second thing I learned by changing from clinical medicine to the finance world is there are some skills that are transferable across all industries, across all jobs. Those are called soft skills. And soft skills are important to help you relate to people, to succeed in multiple different environments, to overcome different challenges, and to be effective in your job, whatever that job may be. So soft skills are absolutely core, absolutely important, and they are very transferable. Hard skills tend to be quite specific to a particular industry, and most of the times they are not transferable. You know, for example, my ability to conduct a cesarean section is not very useful in my current role. However, what is happening with the advent of AI is some of the hard skills, such as data analytics, AI programming, machine learning, ability to understand cybersecurity, networking, etc. All these are becoming very important skills that are transcending all industries. So if you upskill in AI, that's going to be useful whether you're working in actuarial science, in medicine, finance, as an educator, or as an environmentalist, because AI is going to permeate all those different industries. So the second lesson is everyone needs to develop their soft skills because those are transferable across industries. So if you are going to pivot and you've got that superpower to pivot, what is going to help you to pivot are those soft skills. You will need to learn some hard skills, the new hard skills, for example, AI, No one did AI at school, but we all have to learn it now. But the soft skills that you've been cultivating over the last 10, 15, 20 years, those will do you good in good stead as you move forward. So as we move away from my story, let's think about some practical tools that I can leave you guys with. When I look at the future of work, what do I see? Well, the big thing that's happening right now is artificial intelligence. And this is going to automate many, many tasks. And no industry is going to be left untouched. Whether it's your industry, whether it's mathematics, whether it's finance, even medicine, a lot of the things that are done in medicine, include data manipulation, administration. In fact, 60% of the doctor's time is spent on admin. And a lot of those tasks are going to be automated by artificial intelligence. But AI, in particular, machine learning, which is a subset of AI, is going to mean that industries where you generate insights, finance industry, actuarial science, medicine, space, robotics, any of these industries where you're generating new insights, they are also going to be impacted by AI, because with machine learning, it takes all the data out there and is able to formulate new paths, new solutions, new insights. All right. So AI is going to radically shift the workplace. It's going to radically shift all the industries, and it's going to create new opportunities, and it's going to replace some jobs. That is just the reality of the world we live in now. And so what does it mean for you? Well, what it means for you is you either get on board or you get left behind. Now, a lot of people are afraid that AI is going to take their job. That may be true in some cases, but not in all cases. And I'll explain in a second. There's a company called Salesforce.com. Some of you may have heard of it, but we all use it, or it touches something that we use all the time, every day. It is a customer relationships management software business, or CRM as it's called, and it works across many of the internet services that we use. And their CEO, a guy called Mark Benioff, said this last week during a conference call. He said, for the first time, technology, and by this he was talking about AI, isn't just offering tools for humans to do work. It's providing intelligent, scalable, digital labor that performs tasks autonomously. And the key thing there is digital labor. So you've got these AI agents, or agentic AI, as it's called. AI agents that you can program to say, at the 30th of every month, file my taxes. At the 5th of every month, can you book this? At the end of every quarter, can you generate a report? Whenever you see this client, can you give them an insurance code, or whatever it is, right? All the work, some of the work that we used to do as humans was tedious, it was complicated. You can now hire a digital worker to be able to do that job. And these digital workers will do one thing, and just one thing only, nothing else. That's all they do. If it's booking flights, that's all they do. Book me a flight, it will book you a flight. Doesn't do anything else. You try to make it do something else, it won't. It'll just do that. So if your job was in the travel industry, and most of your time was spent looking for flights and booking flights, then your job is going to get disrupted. One of the most famous, now I guess, famous CEOs currently is Jensen Huang, who's the CEO of NVIDIA. And he was asked the question, is AI going to replace jobs? And his answer was, no AI is going to do 100% of someone's job. But AI is going to do 50% of all of our jobs. At least, for some people it'll be more, for some people it'll be less. But on average, AI is going to do at least 50% of what we currently do today. So it's not AI that's going to replace your job. It's someone who knows how to use AI who's going to replace your job. And that is absolutely true. So if you're preparing for a job of the future, what do you need to do? I suggest three things. One is anticipate industry trends, and I've already touched on AI, robotics, machine learning, and whatever else is happening in your particular area of interest or industry. You need to keep abreast with what's changing. Don't say, I went to university, I passed my exam, my professional exam, so it's done, I'm finished. It doesn't work like that. You always have to be figuring out where is the puck going, and that's where you want to skate. The second thing is continuous skill development. The workplace values skills. It doesn't value stories, it values skills. So a lot of people put a lot of effort in their CV so it looks nice and it's got good punctuation, etc., etc. Yes, that's a nice story, but at the end of the day, it's about the skills that you have. So if you're able to continuously develop those skills, then that is going to give you a leg up when it comes to jobs of the future. And learning AI is one such example of adding a new skill. And the final thing I'd recommend is to embrace technology. It's very easy to say, this is a new thing, I don't understand it at all, so I'm not even going to try, I'm going to stick to what I know. I am going to be a ham. But, as the story that I mentioned suggests, that is a losing strategy. What you need to do is to embrace change, to embrace technology, and to be a scurry, take action, develop your skills, see where the world is going, embrace technology, and embrace change. Now, there are many different frameworks that one can employ, but I thought I would share this 12-step framework of how you can future-proof your career, how you can take an unconventional path into almost any industry that you want. One is digital adaptability, which I've already mentioned, which is about embracing technology. Second one is a growth mindset. It's very, very key. It goes back to those soft skills that I touched on. Because you need that you need to make a decision to say, I'm going to learn AI, which is similar to your digital adaptability. AI is the current thing. That's what you need to learn. And, all these other things, problem solving, emotional intelligence, resilience, agility learning, etc., etc. Now, what you notice, if you have time to study this, is many of these steps in the 12-step framework, they are soft skills. So as I mentioned before, soft skills are transferable. So if you're going to invest in anything in terms of your education for the future, I'd suggest you weight the soft skills more than the hard skills. The problem that many young people have, and indeed many people in general have, is they put all their weight in the hard skills and not enough in the soft skills. So they are very qualified, but they haven't got the soft skills. They haven't got the people skills, the problem-solving skills, the mindfulness. They don't know how to network. They don't know how to communicate. They haven't got emotional intelligence. They are effectively like robots, right? Well, the sad reality is they are very fast and tireless robots that are coming, powered by AI, and they are going to disrupt all those kind of people because they haven't got the soft skills. So if you're going to invest in anything right now, make sure you invest in soft skills. Now, there is something called a personalized T profile, and everyone has it, whether you know it or you don't, right? And it looks something like this. You've got breadth of skills on one leg, and then you've got depth of expertise on another leg. What most people do is they focus a lot on the functional skills, right? And so their breadth is very narrow. You've got very specific skills, and that's it, right? If the world changes away from your skill, then you've got no job, and then you're going to be one of those people who are going to be crying wolf and saying, AI is taking my job, I've been let go, etc., etc. Right? Whereas what one needs to do is to develop a broad range of essential skills. And these are not just functional skills, they're industry specific skills. If you want to stay in the same industry, they are personal skills. This is where your soft skills come into play. But you also want to develop the depth of expertise, right? Because AI is going to, or when the world changes, is going to replace those people who are the least easily replaceable, right? But if you've got depth of expertise and you've got the breadth as well, then you're actually going to be more successful. And by the way, this is not just for employees. This is also for people who want to be entrepreneurs, right? If you want to be an entrepreneur, you've got to have a range of skills. You've got to know how to sell. You've got to know how to deal with the regulators or the authorities. You've got to know how to prepare accounts. When you're initially starting, you've got to be a strategic thinker. You need to know how to operate. You need to know how to invoice. You need to know how to balance the books. You need to know how to deal with the overheads. You need to know how to plan, all those kind of things, even though maybe your business has nothing to do with any of that stuff, but you need to have a broad range of skills. So let me encourage you to think about your own personality profile. Take some time out, try and figure out what personal skills have you got, what functional skills have you got, and I have no doubt everyone on this call has got very strong functional skills. But what industry specific skills have I got? Can you pivot within your industry? Can you move from the data programmer to become a manager? Can you move from a manager to become a C-suite executive? Can you move from an analyst to become a fund manager? Can you stay within the industry, but do you have the industry specific skills as well? And then rank yourself in terms of the depth of expertise and see where you are. And then that will help build a good profile. And then it will identify any missing gaps that you can then concentrate on. So the question is, what should I work on today? Well, the answer is it's highly specific. Where are your gaps? If you've gone through this exercise, then you know what the answer should be for you. So I'm about to summarize now and say, how do you walk the unconventional path? Because maybe you only know the people in your particular industry, but you don't know anyone else in another industry you may be interested in getting to. And the answer there is networking. So I talked about a superpower, which is the power to pivot. Another superpower is the power of networking. Now, this is a very good group because this is a networking group. But what I'd suggest is if you wanted to walk the unconventional path, you need to network across industries. So go and join other groups, go and network with other industries and meet with other people. Can you pursue interdisciplinary projects and collaborations, broaden your horizons? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? So the only way to do that is to meet people who think differently, who are doing very different things to you. Then your mind will be opened. And then aligned to that is seek diverse mentors, right? Don't just seek mentors in your industry. Find mentors doing completely different things, and then you can learn things from them. So in conclusion, how do I suggest that you walk an unconventional path based on my experience? 3 things. 1, embrace change and view it as a catalyst for growth. 2, be an unconventional thinker because it's these kind of people who will bring new perspectives. And then 3 is learn continuously and learn widely. So I'll stop you there and I will head it back to Ashton and then we will, start our discussion. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Jamie. Oh, what an insightful presentation indeed. Okay, I must admit that I read the book Who Moved My Cheese. It was after I saw your in conversation with Trevor. Then I was like, no, I need to read this book. I think it's nice, and it really it's nice. And one of the key things that I learned from that was that we have to be aware of change. So the reason why the 2 little beings didn't realize that the cheese was, was being chopped by other things, is because they were not paying attention to change. So I think it's one of the things that we need to do. And thank you for enlightening us that the world is evolving and is changing. So we gotta embrace and we gotta be prepared. And also, one of the key takeaways I took from your presentation was that, of course, AI is going to replace some jobs, but it's going to replace those jobs with people who are not prepared. So we gotta embrace and we gotta be up to date with AI so that our jobs won't be replaced. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, if you have a burning question, may you kindly raise your hand, or you may as well type it in. But for now, I'm going through some of the questions that were posted by some of you during the registration process. So I'm going to read the first one from Talent Show. So it's saying, what is needed for one to specialize in investment, and what exams to into investments?
Thanks for that, Talent. So investments is such a broad industry that it's very difficult to answer that question specifically. I'll probably say the most broad qualification one can take if you want to get into investments, if you like, is an MBA, because MBA gives you access to the whole business. And if you come into the investment world, yes, you can certainly use an MBA as a way to get in. In fact, I tell people from my mentoring and coaching service that for you to get a job at one of the high-powered firms, typically you've got to be doing an MBA at a university somewhere, because that's how they recruit. They come to these universities and then they will recruit people from there. So that's the easy answer. However, CFA is very industry specific. If you want to get into investments per se, then CFA is the way to go. The only problem, of course, is unlike MBA, there is nowhere where recruiters come and recruit. It's one where you do the CFA and then you can put it on your CV, and that then tells potential recruiters that you know what you're talking about. But even then, it's still very broad because there are many different asset classes, and CFA, I know it's changing a little bit now, but CFA is quite broad. It covers everything. And so even when you get into the investment world and you're doing a particular thing, whether it's equities or fixed income, commodities or alternative investments, you still have to do other professional exams on top. So MBA or CFA are a good starting point, but they are not the end of your exam. That way.
All right. I hope Talent was answered there. Another question came from Ikabot Masocha. I hope I have pronounced the name correctly. So he asked that, what is the role of data science in wealth fund institutions?
It's a lot. So wealth management is one of the biggest industries in the world. There's a lot of money being changing hands, a lot of intelligent people, the best and the brightest. So it's very, very competitive. And so where can you get an edge? One of them is data and interpreting that data. So, we all get the data at the same time because it has to be public. It's got to be available to everyone at the same time because no one should have an advantage. So having the data is not an advantage. It's what you do with the data that's the advantage. So you find that the big banks, the Goldman Sachs of this world, they had proprietary algorithms where they could use very strong computers, very powerful computers to be able to trade 5 or 6 times within 1 second and make money off you, for example. That has changed a little bit because of the regulators, but they still have the edge in terms of how they manipulate data and how they can get insights coming from that data. So data science is very, very important. The hedge fund industry is really built on data science, and AI is obviously changing that, because you've got a powerful machine. You can mine all this data, come up with the insights before everyone else, trade and profit from them.
Oh, all right. I hope he has been answered there. Then I have another question from Bright Choga, saying, for a medical practitioner who is eager to remain in clinical practice, are there any major advantages in diversifying training across industries like finance or art?
100%. There's one important thing you have to think about, and I know it's very difficult at your age to think strategically, but and this is one of the things that happened to me. I was working in a private medical practice in the UK, and there were no opportunities to specialize or progress or anything. And I was thinking, in 10 years from now, do I want to be still doing the same thing? 20 years from now, 30 years from now? So at the time, it's very hard to think about that, because you're quite happy, you're focused on what you're doing right now. But 20 years from now, you're still doing what you've been doing for the last 20 years, and you've got youngsters who are coming and doing exactly the same job, and you're thinking, man, I'm too old to be doing this. But because you haven't invested and broadened your skills, you're stuck, right? If only you had, when you were younger, broadened your skills and done other things, then you could pivot. But when you're trying to pivot in your 40s or 50s or 60s, it becomes very, very difficult, because no one really wants. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it becomes much harder than if you had broadened your investment, your portfolio, your personalized profile, as I mentioned, when you were much younger. So as I said before, nothing that you learn is useless. You never know where it's going to take you. A lot of the people that I went to medical school with, they are now medical directors, country directors, they are CEOs, etc. And they'd never have done that if they had just kept doing the same thing over and over. So yes, you can stay in clinical medicine and become a managing director, but you need to learn new skills about management, about finance, about organization, about operations, etc. So it's always worth broadening your skill set.
All right, thank you so much. I think that was the last question from our registration forms. My co-host at Light, I'm sure you might have other questions that I might have missed. May you please bring them in?
Okay, yeah, I've got a few questions. So I think you'd also allow, I see there are some hands that are raised. So
Okay.
let me just read the few questions here. Zimbabwe and many African countries face currency instability and inflation. How can companies in such environments demonstrate sustainable competitive advantages and attract investors? And I think in line with that, what key factors should investors in Zimbabwe and Africa consider when analyzing companies in industries like pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, or medical devices? I've just combined those two questions because I think they're in tandem. So I think you can answer that one, and then I ask the other two questions that I have.
Okay, so yeah, the first question, can you be successful when you're working in a volatile country with volatile currencies and volatile political and economic backdrop? I used to think the answer was no, and many people used to think the answer was no, so that's why many people left Zimbabwe. But as I have grown and I see what's happening, the answer is most definitely yes. At the end of the day, it's about if you've got a successful product, successful service, and can you sell it effectively? Can you run a competent business? And if you can, and the answer is yes to all those, then it doesn't really matter where you are. You can succeed, you can attract capital, etc., etc. Now, the bar is obviously much higher if you are in Zimbabwe and some of these African countries, but it's not necessarily insurmountable. So it has to work. I mean, one of the advantages that I got from the Trevor Nue podcast was I was able to join his WhatsApp group, which is full of people who have been on his podcast before. Many of them are business leaders in Africa, right? And you hear and read their stories, and then you realize, yeah, all these people are succeeding in Namibia, in Uganda, in Zimbabwe, in Kenya, and you're like, okay, so this has really nothing to do, or they are thriving despite the volatility in their currencies and economies, etc. So that's what I would say. Is there is always opportunity for good ideas, good talent, good execution, and it doesn't really matter where you are in the country. The second one is much more specific, and it's too long to answer on this forum. What should you look for? Let me just say healthcare companies. In general, for healthcare companies, you're looking for a product or service that is differentiated, that makes a significant change. So here we're talking about efficacy, and especially safety is very, very key in healthcare. So those are the two things. And then the big gating factor is regulatory approval. Once you get that, then it moves on to commercialization, which is also another big hurdle. And then reinvestment and a few other things. But the big thing is, do you have a product or service that works? Is the regulator on board with that? They agree? Do they give you permission to sell it? And are people willing to pay for it?
Thank you so much for that. And then another question, I think, is stemming out of your profile on ESG. So it's saying ESG principles are increasingly important in investment decisions. How can businesses in Zimbabwe and Africa effectively incorporate ESG to attract both local and international investors? I think also in line with that, many African countries are reliant on commodity exports. How can diversification and innovation in sectors like healthcare, technology, even other industries drive long-term economic growth?
Yeah, so ESG is way more advanced in the Western world than in Africa. That is for sure. And part of the reason is because in Africa we're still dealing with questions of poverty and need, and so that's where the focus is. Whereas there's a lot of excess in the Western world, and so they've got, if you like, the luxury of dealing with ESG. But because they are the biggest polluters, they also, and they have the wherewithal to deal with these issues, they also need to take the lead. So a Zimbabwean company or Namibian company or African company taking the lead in ESG will certainly be a leg up, because not many people are doing it in Africa. How can they do it? You have to have a framework. You have to decide what it is you want to change. Is it the environmental side? Is it the social side? Is it the governance side? In Africa, the biggest problem tends to be the governance side, particularly when it relates to political intervention, corruption, etc. So can we sort out the governance side of things first? The environmental tends to be much less important. The social also tends to be quite important, because there's a lot of unemployment, inequalities, etc. So there are slightly different problems in Africa than they are in the Western world. But ESG as a concept is something that can give an advantage for sure. The second question, yes, the problem we have in Africa is we are commodities driven, and so diversification is very important, especially because commodity prices tend to be quite volatile. But I have to say, again, from my experience with these networks that I'm now in, there's so many business leaders and businesses in Africa that very little, if nothing, to do with commodities. So it's already broadening, and it's already changing, and Africa is becoming more and more like the developed world, if you like, which is more services driven than driven by production, right? So this is already happening, and I think it will continue. So the diversification is already in train, and it will continue. And I'd suggest that, you know, if you wanted to diversify, then all you need to do is just jump on that train.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And then one last question. I think this one it combines with a question that was sent in the chat bot. What strategies would you recommend for Zimbabwean and African companies to attract foreign investments in an era of economic uncertainty? And then with increasing global interest in Africa as a market, what industries do you see as the most promising for investment in the next decade, customized for Zimbabwe? So I think that's the last question that I had from
Okay. To attract investment is very hard because of the regulatory issues and governance issues, as I mentioned. So what I'd probably say is, if you want to attract any foreign investment, putting my investment hat on, what we would look for is a very high return, because we're taking a very high risk. So, you know, we're looking at a return on capital of over 20%. With a payback period of 2 years or less. That's typically what we're looking for. These are very, very high barriers. So how do you get that? You build a successful business that is running independent of capital, and you only ask for capital to expand your business. So you've got to have a working model that you can demonstrate that this is what you have, is already making money, is growing. The only thing that is holding us back is capital. So give us capital, we can scale this thing even more, as opposed to say, we've got this fantastic idea and we need capital to get it off the ground. I don't think that's going to be a winning strategy. So that's what I would say in terms of attracting capital. Then I'd probably say, in terms of the area that is most attractive to invest in Zimbabwe, probably I'm not the most qualified person to comment on that. But, you know, Africa has got a very young population, and in many countries, Zimbabwe included, very educated. So where we need to invest in is, how can we unlock all that potential and use it for productive means. A lot of young people go to school, go to universities, and go, you know, and sit at home or do unconventional work. How can we tap all those people to be more productive in society? If we can find ways to give them jobs, to give them opportunities, to give them ability to start their own businesses, etc., then I think that would be the biggest investment that we could make for Africa. Now, ideally, you want a stable political environment, you want a stable currency, but unfortunately, and I've got news for you, the cheese has been moved. So you've got two choices. Either you could wait for to see the cheese comes back, or you could take action. My suggestion is you take action.
I think
All right, thank you.
these are my questions. Over to you, Ashton.
All right, thank you so much, Delight, for those questions. And guys, the cheese has been moved, so it's up to you. Do you want to be complacent, or you want to chase the cheese? So before we close, I'm going to take just a few questions. Sorry, guys, we are running out of time. I saw a hand from Father Muller. I'm not so sure if he's still in. Father Muller, can you unmute and ask your question? Are you still in? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, sorry. Let me. Okay,
What?
so can you?
Hey,
Father Muller, you're unmuted now.
Hello, guys. Thank you, host. Thank you very much, the presenter, for the insightful presentation. My question was to the presenter that looking ahead, and like you alluded that AI is now something that is already in the present, and looking at our education sector today, what are the opportunities that are there looking from junior school up to universities, since there are skills gap along the way, especially with digital skills from the current education system? What are the opportunities that are there looking ahead, and how can we harness business through them?
What I'd say is when I went to school many years ago, we were a closed economy. You could only learn from the textbooks that you had, and that was that. Eventually, towards the end of my secondary or tertiary education, computers were introduced, so you could now learn a little bit more from the internet. But I remember the time when we used to have to book to go to the internet library to be able to scroll around the internet. So now it's a completely different world. You don't have to just learn what they say at the University of Zimbabwe or Midland State University or what's in your library, etc. You can learn from anyone, anywhere in the world. And that's what I'd suggest you do. There are lots of free courses from the best universities in the world online. You can enroll into a Harvard program for free and learn and get an accreditation for free from Stanford, from Yale University, from Oxford University, etc. So what I'm saying is broaden your horizons. Don't just learn what is there, learn from everyone. Second thing is, as I said, network across industries, because opportunities are going to fall to you, and you don't know where and when, but the only thing you can do is to be prepared, right? That's the only thing. And because you don't know where and when, you can't just do one thing, because the lightning is going to strike somewhere else. So you've got to do a whole range of things. So network across different industries, learn a whole new set of skills, because you never know. And AI is good because you know what it is. So, you can learn machine learning, you can learn how to deploy AI agents, you can learn how to fix AI agents, whatever it is. Those are the skills that companies require. And there's a lady that I work with who's based in Zimbabwe, and she works for companies all over the world, even though she's based in Zimbabwe. So there is no reason why, even from Zimbabwe, you can't learn these new skills online, apply and get a job for a company that's based in Australia or Canada or UK or wherever, and work full-time for this company while you're in Zimbabwe, right? No excuse at all, not this day and age. So what I would suggest is broaden your horizons, learn some new skills, find companies out there, outside Zimbabwe, or even outside Africa, that will value your skills, that will pay you for your skills, and you've got a job or you've got an opportunity to thrive in this new world.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Jimmy. I hope Father Muller has been answered. I can also see a hand from Roy P. Roy P, may you unmute? And our last hand is going to come from Nicholas. So after Roy P, Nicholas, may you ask a question? Then Dr. Jimmy will just answer them all at once.
Okay, thank you. So my question goes to Doc. The question is, have you started any businesses, like are there businesses that you have initiated yourself? And looking into the investment world, what kind of opportunities that you may see that me as a young entrepreneur can chip into in the Zimbabwean economy? And if you have started any businesses, what were the challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them? Or maybe you did not start a business, but you do have maybe a couple of colleagues who initiated certain entrepreneurial companies. What were the things that they had to go through to make those things come to life? That is my question.
Roy, a couple of questions there. Let me just answer before Nicholas comes in. So the short answer is yes. I have started a business. In fact, the business I started it because I was under pressure after the travel, the interview. I had so many people were calling me because, as I said in the interview, my passion is to mentor young people, to help them, to coach them, etc. So I got a lot of calls, and then, it was taking away too much time. So in the end, I started a business, which is a coaching and mentoring service. It's called drmuchechetere.com, where you can book a 15-minute free service, and we can have a chat about where you are, where you want to get to, some strategies. And then if you want specific mentoring or coaching, or you want access to a network, then you can pay some money for that. But it's not a lot. It's just for me to be able to pay for the overheads, really. So yes, I've started a business, but one thing I want to say is that there are two types of people. There are entrepreneurs and there are non-entrepreneurs. So not everyone should start a business. It's not for everyone. Some people are good workers and they should be good workers and should be happy and proud to be that. Other people are entrepreneurs and they should not be workers because they cause a lot of problems while working for other people. They should be entrepreneurs. So you've got to know yourself and who you are. My dear late father was an entrepreneur, and I worked for him in many of the businesses that he started. So, I've seen the ins and the outs. In fact, when I was doing medicine in the early 2000s, my dad had a solar business. So during the week, I'd go to Investec Zimbabwe for my studies. The weekends, you'd find me on top of roofs and inside ceilings, installing solar panels, installing batteries, fixing, broken solar systems, etc. That was my life. So, so I've seen the ins and outs of businesses. Yeah, it's very, very difficult. As I said, you have to know a lot of different things, learn a lot of different skills, be a strategic thinker, be an operational thinker, be able to put out fires. But basically, an entrepreneur is someone who is solving problems all the time. So if you can cultivate that soft skill of problem solving, that would be very helpful for you, Roy, and anyone else interested, because that's what running a business is all about. It's solving problems. So yeah, that's what I'd say. And then the final thing is that there are so many networks that are available of business leaders, as I said. So these are people who have started businesses or are running businesses, and they discuss many of these issues, many of these problems, and you can even take some of your issues, your problems, onto that platform, and these people will help you for free, right? So what I'd suggest is find those networks, join those networks, and then you can get help, answers, you can help someone else, you can contribute, you can share ideas, share experiences, etc. Nicholas?
Nicholas, may I unmute? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Aston, and thank you very much, Dr. Jimmy. Okay, so my question is on the soft skill side. So we know that actuaries are highly intelligent people, and we all know this to be true. However, beyond simply possessing an impressive IQ, however, emotional intelligence is also essential to success and harmony in the workplace. Okay, as someone who enjoys and excels in mathematics, I always find myself dedicating most of my time to working with numbers and technical skills. However, I realized that I need to improve my soft skills, particularly social awareness. What practical steps can I take to develop these skills and strike a better balance? Okay, so by practical skills, I'm trying to refer to a more natural way of acquiring soft skills, because I also heard some people saying you should read this book, it can help you to improve your soft skills, but it's not quite working out. Thank you.
Yeah, so Nicholas, I'd say two things, which I've already mentioned, very, very important. Number one is network. Join some networking groups, where you meet up with people and you talk, you discuss, that's how you improve your social skills. In fact, that's how you improve any skill, is you use it, you practice, you use that skill. That's how you improve the skill. So you want to leave your numbers, go out into the world, meet some people, interact. That's how you're going to improve any skill. The second thing is find a mentor, someone who can help you and coach you very specifically. So if you're struggling with something in particular, is someone you can talk to and they can help you and build your confidence around that one particular thing, right? So networking and mentoring or coaching is what I suggest. In terms of books, there's a book that I'd recommend everyone read here. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie, very old book, but it's very, very useful because it gives you very practical ways of improving your people skills. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Very simple, very old book, very successful. I'd highly recommend that. And then I just saw a comment in terms of how to get in touch with me. As I said, drjimmymuchechetere.com. You go there and then you'll be able to find your way through.
All right. Thank you so much. I hope, Nicholas, you have been answered there. And Roy P, please confirm. Okay. Their silence, I'm sure it means that they have been answered. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have come to the end of our meeting today. Time is always jealous. We could have spent the whole night speaking, but then we got other things to do. Well, help me to thank Dr. Jamie for taking us through this seminar. Thank you so much for sacrificing your time. I'm sure you could have been doing other things, should I say other better things, but you have dedicated it to come to engage with us and to discuss. Thank you so much. And as well, I want to thank you, everyone who have made it to this meeting. I really hope that you picked one or two, three things that are going to help you in your day-to-day life. Please make sure you implement whatever you learn so that it cannot just be a waste of time and data, so to speak. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And for more information, please follow Actuso on the details that have been posted in the chat box, and for more questions and yes, other feedback, you can follow us through. Thank you so much, everyone. Dr. Jimmy, thank you so much. All right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.